the day the sky went silent. The sun was setting over the green hills of Miralyn, a quiet alien world where the wind always carried a song. Vaelri, a young alien girl with silver eyes and skin that shimmered like moonlight, sat near the edge of a rocky cliff brushing her dragon scales. His name was Skarn. He wasn't just a pet. He was her soul-bonded companion, strong, intelligent, and beautiful. His wings could cover half the field, and when he roared, even the trees shook. But to Vaelri, he was family. "We'll fly again tomorrow, Skarn," she whispered. Skarn purred low, smoke curling from his nose. Everything felt perfect, until the sky changed. It started with silence. The birds stopped. The wind died. Even Skarn lifted his head suddenly, sensing something wrong. Vaelri looked up. One by one, the stars disappeared. A dark shape moved across the sky, huge, round, and quiet as death. It was a ship, but not just any ship. It was Ashari black metal, used only by the most feared syndicate in the galaxy. No lights, no warning. It simply hovered, like a beast watching from above. "Skarn," Vaelri whispered. He growled, crouched low. Suddenly, spotlights from the ship flashed down. Skarn roared and spread his wings, but it was too late. Beams of red light shot from the ship, wrapping around Skarn like ropes. He screamed, thrashing. Trying to break free, Vaelri ran forward, screaming his name, but the beams were too strong. Skarn was pulled into the air, chained and helpless. His wings flapped once, twice, then he was gone, dragged into the belly of the ship. "No!" Vaelri shouted, falling to her knees. The ship hovered for one moment longer, then vanished into the clouds. The sky was silent again. That night, Vaelri sat alone by the cliff. No one came to help. The elders of the village said it was too dangerous. "A Ashari syndicate," they whispered. "They trade rare beasts, they kill anyone who follows." "He's just a dragon," someone said. "They'll sell him. Or worse." But Vaelri didn't move. Her eyes were full of fire. "He's not just a dragon," she said. "He's my heart." Still, no one offered help. No one, except one man. He was sitting in the corner of the tavern, quiet, unshaved, and dressed in worn-out gear. A human. Nobody knew his name. He didn't speak much. But when Vaelri walked in, tear-stained and shaking, he looked at her and said, "You lost something important." She stared at him. "They took Skarn." He nodded. "I saw it. I know that ship." Her voice cracked. "Will you help me?" He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the stars, then said softly, "Yes." Vaelri blinked. "Why?" He stood up, tall and strong, with eyes that had seen too many battles. "Because no one else will." The next morning they left. The man introduced himself as Elias Thorn, once a soldier, now a traveler. He had an old ship called the Stubborn Flame, scratched, rusty, but still flying. Vaelri had never left her world before. Now, she was leaving everything behind. As they launched into the stars, she whispered to herself, "I'm coming, Skarn, just hold on." The ship disappeared into the dark sky, and thus began the journey of a girl, a dragon, and the only human who cared enough to fight. The Wounded Star Lap. The stars outside the window of the ship flickered like tiny fires. Vaelri sat in silence, her hands resting on her lap, her eyes red from crying. She had never left her planet before. Now she was flying through deep space with a human she barely knew, chasing a dragon only she could truly understand. Elias Thorn sat in the pilot seat of the Stubborn Flame. He didn't talk much, but every time he glanced at Vaelri, there was something in his eyes. A quiet promise. "You okay?" he asked without turning around. Vaelri shook her head slowly. "No, I feel like part of me is missing." Elias gave a soft grunt. "That's what it's like when they take something they shouldn't." They stopped at an old fueling station hidden behind a broken moon. It looked like a junkyard, filled with broken ships and strange creatures. Elias led Velry to a stall where an alien trader with glowing green skin waited. "We need a map," Elias said. "To where?" the trader hissed. "The black market trails. Rare creature sales." The trader raised a bony brow. "Dangerous. Business?" Elias handed him a small box. Inside was a silver cube. The trader smiled and tossed them a wounded star map, an old half-burned data crystal. "It'll get you close," the trader whispered. "But be careful. Some stars on that map are bleeding." Back on the ship, Elias plugged the crystal into the console. The map lit up, showing a path through dark zones, abandoned sectors, and pirate-run planets. Velry looked at it, feeling a chill. "Where does it lead?" Elias tapped one red dot. "Here. Zephyrex 7. That's where they're taking your dragon." Velry stared at the name. It felt heavy, like a place no one should go. "How do you know?" "Because I've been there, years ago, and I barely made it out." That night, while the ship flew silently through space, Velry had a dream. She saw Skarn, bound, in glowing chains, weak, surrounded by cruel faces. He looked up at her with tired eyes, but then his voice entered her mind. "Don't stop." She woke up gasping. Elias was already awake, sitting in the dark, sharpening a blade. "Bad dream?" he asked. "It wasn't a dream," Velry said. "He's hurting. I felt it." As they neared Zephyrex 7, the stars grew dimmer. The air inside the ship felt tighter. A warning beeped on the screen. Elias narrowed his eyes. "We've been spotted." A shadow appeared on the screen. Another ship, sleek and fast, trailing behind them. "Hold tight," Elias said. He pulled a lever, sending the stubborn flame into a sharp dive through an asteroid field. The enemy ship followed, firing red blasts. Velry grabbed the seat, her heart racing. "What do we do?" "We fight," Elias said. He flipped a switch. The ship's tail opened, releasing small mines behind them. An explosion rocked space. The enemy ship was gone. Velry looked at Elias with wide eyes. "How did you learn all this?" He didn't answer for a while. Then he said, "Let's just say I've lost people too." They reached Zephyrex 7 at dawn. It was a dry, broken world with giant metal towers and no sky, just smoke and dust. As they landed, Elias turned to Velry. "We go in quiet. We find Skarn. We don't stop for anything." Velry nodded. Her heart was beating fast. She had never been so afraid, but also never so sure. Her dragon was here. She could feel it. They walked into the city, blending with traders and buyers. Everyone wore masks. Everyone had weapons. They followed the sounds of shouting and metal clashing. And then, they found it. A giant auction hall. And inside, in a cage of light and pain, Skarn. His eyes opened slowly when he saw her. Velry took a step forward, but a voice behind them stopped everything. "Looking for something?" A tall figure in dark armor stood with two guards. Zarnak the Collector. His eyes gleamed. "You shouldn't have come here, girl. The cages of Zephyrex 7 too." The cages of Zephyrex 7. The room was dark except for the shimmering blue cages. Creatures from across the galaxy were trapped inside, beasts with horns, wings, tentacles, and even glowing eyes. They moaned, cried, or lay still in sadness. It was not a place of life. It was a place of trade, a market for the broken. Velry's eyes searched desperately. Then she saw him. Skarn. Her dragon lay in the biggest cage at the center. His body was covered in bruises and dull scars. Chains wrapped around his wings, and his breathing was slow, like a tired storm. "Skarn," she whispered. He didn't move, but his eyes fluttered. For one moment, they opened, and he saw her. His tail twitched, but then a loud voice echoed through the hall. "You're not supposed to be here." Zarnak the Collector stepped into the light, flanked by two robotic guards. His armor was dark red with sharp silver shoulder plates. A long scar ran down his left cheek. "Do you know what happens to uninvited guests?" Zarnak said with a smile. Elias stepped forward slowly. "We're here to buy the dragon." Zarnak laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was cold, sharp, and cruel. "This beast? He's worth more than 100 planets. He's already been sold." "To who?" Valerie asked, her fists clenched. "To someone who knows how to use him," Zarnak replied. "He leaves at dawn." Elias reached for his side where his blaster was hidden, but before he could act, the guards raised their guns. Zarnak was already expecting trouble. "Take them to the cells," he ordered. The hallway was filled with shadows. The guards pushed Elias and Valerie into a dark underground tunnel. Sparks flickered from broken wires above. Everything smelled like oil and blood. They were separated. Elias was dragged to the left and Valerie to the right. She kicked and screamed, but it didn't matter. The walls didn't care. Valerie was thrown into a small cell. Her heart was pounding. She hit the metal bars, shouting for Skarn. No answer. She sat down and cried, hands shaking. But as the minutes passed, something changed. The room began to glow softly, light coming from her chest. It wasn't fire. It wasn't magic. It was the bond, her connection to Skarn. She closed her eyes and reached out, not with her hands, but with her soul. Far away, Skarn lifted his head. He felt her, weak, but still alive. He growled softly. Their bond pulsed. Valerie stood up, wiping her tears. "I'm not giving up," she whispered. Meanwhile, in another part of the compound, Elias sat on the cold floor. His hands were tied behind his back. A guard leaned on the wall nearby, half asleep. Elias smiled. "You really should have tied the knots tighter," he said. With a twist of his wrists, a small knife popped out of his sleeve. He cut the ropes and knocked the guard unconscious in one silent move. "Amateurs," he muttered. He grabbed the guard's pass card and ran into the dark halls. Back in her cell, Valerie heard a soft humming noise. The floor beneath her lit up. The cage was moving, sliding across the room. Her eyes widened. They were taking her somewhere. A new cage opened. She was pushed into a glowing chamber and thrown into a cage beside Skarn. Zarnak appeared again, outside the cage. "Figured I'd give you a goodbye," he sneered. "Before the warlord takes him." Valerie ignored him. She reached out and touched Skarn's side. Their bond flared again, stronger now. Skarn growled. His eyes opened fully, and then the fire returned. The fire within. The cage glowed blue, but the light began to flicker. Valerie stood still, one hand on Skarn's scales. Her eyes closed. She didn't need to speak. Their bond was stronger now. Stronger than fear. Stronger than pain. Skarn's eyes opened wide. His chest rose with deep, slow breaths. Sparks danced across his nostrils. The chains trembled. Outside, the cage, Zarnak chuckled. "Cute. You think you can wake him up with love?" But even as he spoke, the ground shook slightly. Skarn growled. A real growl. Not weak, not tired. Alive. Zarnak took a step back. No. Skarn's wings flexed. The glowing chains around him began to crack. Blue sparks shot out like lightning. The air turned hot. The very metal of the cage began to melt at the corners. "Shut it down!" Zarnak yelled at his guards. They rushed to the control panel. Too late. Skarn let out a mighty roar. Fire exploded from his mouth, not the kind that burns, but the kind that breaks walls. The cage shattered into pieces. Valerie fell to her knees as the light and sound filled the room. Skarn stepped over her, wings spread wide, tail slashing through the bars like they were paper. Zarnak screamed, "Kill it!" Dozens of guards rushed in with blasters. The air filled with fire, smoke, and shouts. And in that chaos, a blast door slid open behind them. Elias stepped into the fire. He held a blaster in each hand, face covered in soot, eyes sharp as knives. "He's awake!" he shouted over the noise. "Very," Valerie replied. He threw her a small device. "Hold tight." She grabbed it just as Skarn lowered his neck. She jumped on without hesitation. Elias ran beside them as Skarn plowed through, walls like they were made of dust. Outside the city of Zephyrex 7 was chaos. Alarms screamed, ships took off, traders ran. Skarn charged down the streets, fire blasting from his mouth. Elias ran alongside, covering their sides, shooting at any threat, but the exit gate was closing, massive metal doors grinding shut. "We won't make it," Velry shouted. "Skarn will," Elias said. The dragon's wings opened wide. They jumped. With a final push, Skarn flew over the gate just as it slammed shut behind them. A shockwave from the wall almost knocked them off, but he stayed strong. Elias grabbed onto Velry's arm, swinging behind her on Skarn's back. They soared into the smoke-filled sky. "Where's the ship?" Velry asked. "North Tower platform," Elias replied, but a shadow blocked the sky. Zarnak had launched his hunter ship. "You're not escaping." Zarnak's voice boomed from the speaker. The chase began in the clouds. Skarn twisted through burning buildings, his wings slicing through wind. Lasers shot past them. One hit a tower, sending flames into the air. Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a small glowing cube. "Velry, toss this when I say so." "What is it?" "Plan B." The hunter ship locked onto them. "Now!" Elias yelled. Velry threw the cube behind them. It exploded in a flash of light and static. The hunter ship lost power for a few seconds, just long enough. Skarn dove, twisting under a pipe and into the hangar platform where the stubborn flame waited. They landed hard. Elias ran up the ramp, firing back at guards chasing them. "Go, go, go!" Velry guided Skarn into the bay below, locking the platform. She jumped into the co-pilot seat. Elias fired the engines. The ship blasted off the ground just as Zarnak's hunter ship powered back up, but they were faster. The stubborn flame punched through the clouds and disappeared into the stars. Inside, silence returned. Velry sat beside Skarn in the cargo bay. He was breathing calmly now. He nudged her gently with his snout. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "You came back to me," she whispered. "You brought him back," Elias said, leaning in the doorway. Velry looked up. "I couldn't have done it without you." Elias shrugged. "Yeah, but you're the reason he fought back." Velry stood and hugged Elias tightly. He didn't know what to do at first. Then, he hugged her back. In the cold quiet of space, the ship flew onward. But this wasn't the end, because Zarnak wasn't finished, and something else was coming. Something none of them could see yet. But for now, they had each other. And Skarn was free. Shadows on their trail. The stars blinked calmly outside the window of the stubborn flame. But inside the ship, no one felt calm. Velry leaned against Skarn, who was curled up in the corner of the cargo bay. His scales still shimmered with heat, but his eyes were tired. He needed time to heal and rest. She stroked his long neck gently, whispering soft words in her native tongue. In the control room, Elias was not resting. He stared at the blinking lights on the screen. One dot, small, and red, was following them, getting closer. "He's coming," Elias muttered. "Zarnak doesn't give up." Later, Elias joined Velry in the cargo bay. He tossed her a protein bar and sat beside her. "We need to change our course," he said. "Why?" she asked. "Because Zarnak planted a tracker. We ditched it, but they've got more resources than we do." Velry nodded slowly. "Where do we go?" Elias leaned back. "There's someone I know, a tech whisperer. She might help us disappear." "Can we trust her?" "She once rebuilt my entire leg with junk parts and a spoon, so maybe." They landed on a planet called Siran X. It was cold, gray, and foggy. The buildings were crooked. The streets looked abandoned, but deep underground a city pulsed with neon light and electronic noise. Velry stayed on the ship with Skarn while Elias went to find the tech whisperer. He returned after an hour with a small woman in a cloak and glowing goggles. Her name was Mizzy. Mizzy walked straight up to Skarn, who lifted his head and growled. "Easy, lizard," she said, unbothered. "I've seen bigger." Valery's mouth fell open. "You've... what?" "I used to work in the war zones. Saw dragons fused with mech frames. This guy? He's a miracle. But I can help." She pulled out a strange tool and scanned Skarn's wings. Then she turned to Elias. "You need an identity wipe and a ghost drive. Can you do it?" "Can I?" "Darling, I built the first one." For the next several hours, Mizzy worked on the ship. She installed cloaking tech and rewired the ship's energy signature. Meanwhile, Valery and Elias shared stories. She told him about her planet, how dragons lived beside her people like family. He told her about his past as a smuggler and soldier, and the friend he lost to Zarnak years ago. They sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. But just as Mizzy finished her upgrades, the lights flickered. The alarm blared. Elias rushed to the cockpit. "They found us." A fleet of small black ships hovered above the planet. Zarnak's banner glowed on their sides. "They came fast," Mizzy said, "which means they were close." "We've got to move," Elias ordered, but Skarn wasn't strong enough to fly again. Valery refused to leave him behind. "Then we fight," she said firmly. They powered up the ship's new defenses. Mizzy activated the cloaking shield. Blasts hit the ground around them. Smoke filled the air. Then, Skarn stood up. He wasn't at full strength, but he roared. He would fight. Zarnak's voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "Give me the dragon, or be destroyed," Elias replied calmly, pressing the speaker button. "You'll have to earn him." Valery climbed onto Skarn's back. Elias manned the turrets. Mizzy stayed in the engine room, controlling the shields. The fight began. Lasers lit the sky. Ships flew overhead, shooting down on them. But Skarn flew again. Slow, but steady. He dodged blasts, burned one ship from below, and used the terrain to hide. Elias hit 3 targets before they could get close, but they were surrounded. That's when Mizzy activated the ghost drive. The ship vanished, its signal erased. All Zarnak's tracking systems went blank. "Where'd they go?" Zarnak yelled. Skarn dove back into the cargo bay. The doors sealed. The ship turned and jumped into hyperspace. They escaped. Again. But the war wasn't over. Back in space, the crew sat in silence. Tired, but alive. "He'll keep chasing us," Valery said. "Let him," Elias replied. "Next time, we won't." "Run!" Skarn growled softly in agreement. Valery smiled. They were becoming more than just survivors. They were becoming a family. The Broken Crown. Far from the fires of battle and the deep shadows of Saron X, the ship's stubborn flame glided through. Quiet space. The stars were calm, but tension still lingered. Elias stood at the helm watching the navigation screen. Valery sat beside Skarn, who now rested with strength slowly returning to his eyes and wings. Every breath he took sounded steadier. But the silence didn't last long. A signal came through, not from Zarnak, from the Council of Elders, the rulers of Valery's homeworld. The message was short and sharp. "Return immediately. You are charged with treason." Valery's face turned pale. "They think I stole Skarn," she whispered. "You didn't," Elias said. "No, but the Council never cared about truth. They only care about control." Elias nodded slowly. "Then it's time we break their control." They returned to Valery's planet Erthus under the protection of the cloaking tech. The skies were beautiful, blue clouds, floating islands, and dragons soaring across the sky. But the palace, at the heart of the capital, looked like a prison now. Tall walls. Dozens of guards, banners of the council waving proudly. Elias and Valery didn't wait. They walked through the main gate, Skarn beside them, and demanded to speak. The High Council stood in a circle above them on the marble floor. They were old, proud, and cold. One elder pointed a long finger at Valery. "You left the dragon behind. You betrayed your oath." He was dying, Valerie shouted. You abandoned him. We were at war, another elder replied. He was a tool, nothing more. Valerie's fists clenched. He's not a tool. He's a soul. A life, my friend. Skarn growled, stepping forward, his wings unfolded, slowly, but strong. Then Elias stepped in. You want someone to blame? Blame me, I broke him out. The elders leaned in, murmuring. You will be punished, the lead elder said. Try it, Elias replied. But first, answer this. He pulled up a small device. A hologram appeared, footage from Zarnax, market footage of council members, secretly selling off dragons. Gasps filled the hall. One of the younger guards stepped back in shock. That's illegal. That's treason, Elias said, eyes locked on the elders. Chaos broke loose. Guards turned on guards. Some elders tried to run, some begged, some fought, but Skarn rose behind Elias and Valerie like a god of fire and fury. You called him a weapon, Elias shouted, but he chose mercy. What do you choose? The elders fell silent. Then, the doors opened again. The people of Erthis walked in. Farmers, scholars, children. They had seen the broadcast. They had heard Skarn's roar, and they stood with Valerie. The High Council fell. Not with a war, but with the truth. The people demanded a new beginning. That night, under the open stars, a new circle was formed, not of lords or rulers, but of guardians. Valerie was named the Dragon Speaker, the first of her kind in 100 years. Elias was offered a place by her side. He refused. I'm no ruler, he said. I'm a wanderer. But Valerie just smiled. Then wander with us. Skarn rested on the edge of a cliff, watching the dragons fly again over the mountains. He looked at Elias and Valerie with quiet pride. He knew they had broken the chains, not just his, but the chains around an entire world. The oath of flame and sky. The morning sky over Erthis was soft and golden. Dragons flew freely, their wings casting long shadows on the ground below. Villagers stood in fields, not in fear, but in awe. And at the edge of the cliffs, beside, the newly rebuilt temple, Skarn watched the world he nearly lost, now reborn. Valerie stood beside him, her robes fluttering in the breeze. She wore a new insignia on her chest, one that symbolized unity between dragons and people. Elias approached quietly, his usual smirk softer today. You look like someone who's about to give a big speech, he said. Valerie laughed. I am, and I hate speeches. Then make it a promise instead. Crowds gathered near the temple. The entire council chamber had been replaced with an open platform. Instead of looking down from above, leaders now stood among the people. Valerie stepped forward, Skarn behind her like a flame made flesh. She raised her voice, not loud, but steady. We used to believe power was everything, that dragons were weapons, that rules were more important than kindness. But Skarn showed me otherwise. Elias showed me otherwise. And now, I will show you all. We can change. She took a deep breath. Today, we vow. Never again will we chain a friend. Never again will we treat life like a tool. Dragons and people will rise together. The crowd cheered. Skarn lifted his head and released a mighty, peaceful roar that echoed through the sky. Elias clapped slowly, then faster. Then everyone joined in. And just like that, the old ways were gone. That evening, Elias stood by his ship, the stubborn flame, ready to leave. Valerie approached him. So, that's it? You're just going to vanish into space? That was always the plan. You could stay. You're a hero now. He chuckled. I'm not made for statues, but you are. Skarn nudged Elias gently with his head. Even he wants you to stay, Valerie said. Elias smiled but looked up at the stars. There's another world out there that needs help. Another dragon. Another girl, another fight. Valerie nodded. Then go, but promise you'll return. I will. They hugged, tight, long, full of everything words couldn't say. As Elias's ship lifted into the sky, Skarn and Valerie watched together. He vanished into the stars. But something had changed, not just on Earthis, but across the galaxy, because word spread, fast. The story of the human who saved a dragon, the girl who stood up to a council, the flame that couldn't be chained. Months later, Valerie stood at the edge of a training field. Young riders flew with dragons for the first time. A little girl ran up to her. Lady Valerie, did Skarn really melt a cage? Valerie smiled. He did. With fire? With love, she said. The child blinked. That's weird. Valerie laughed. You'll understand one day. She looked up. Skarn was flying free again, strong, fierce, beautiful. Far away in the dark corners of space, Zarnak still plotted. He had lost this time, but his eyes burned with revenge. Next time, he hissed, I'll take everything from them. But he didn't know. They were no longer alone. They were no longer weak. They had fire. They had unity. And most of all, they had each other.